Welcome to Mindful School Marketing, your go-to podcast for personal and professional growth.
We're school marketers, business owners, and moms passionate about connecting other school professionals with tools and strategies for success.
We love solving problems, exploring new ideas, and thinking outside the box. Let's transform your school and life starting right now. Welcome to Mindful School Marketing. I'm Aubrey Bursch. Today, we're going to talk about something schools don't always love to talk about, but probably really need to talk about more often, and that is how to decide whether an event, program, or tradition should continue. Because schools are really, really good at adding things. We add events, programs, celebration, fundraisers, community building moments, events, anything, any new initiative. We love adding them onto our plates. But often each one started for a good reason, like there was a need for it, right? But over time, those events, may stop serving the school in the same way. And parent volunteers may dry up. We see this a lot. Staff take on more of the lift. The event may really look successful from the outside, but internally it may be draining time and energy and resources from everyone. So today, Miriam Stein of Hive is joining us to walk through a decision-making matrix that will help schools move from, the emotion around events and these programs and stuff to strategy. So we're going to talk about how to evaluate whether something is still aligned with your mission, your enrollment goals, your community needs, and your actual capacity. So I'm super excited for this conversation for many reasons, but because I see this as the time that independent and private schools, especially small schools, where every hour counts and every staff member counts and every event has to matter. Like, this is a great episode for you to tune into to figure out, how do you evaluate your events, programs, and see what stays and see what goes. So Miriam, thrilled to have you here. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh gosh, Aubrey, it's such a pleasure to be here. I love your content. I love following you. I love your webinars and your podcasts. And thanks so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here and excited to share. I'm a part of Hive. I work with my power partner, Laurie Ehrlich, on enrollment and marketing strategy for schools. Some of you may know me also as Miriam of Saddle Rock Strategies. I have two identities, as many of us do, just mine have names to them. But my number one goal is to help people get better at what they do, especially in schools with enrollment, with marketing strategy. And I served for many years in a private independent school. It was pre-K through 12th grade of about 1,000 students. And I felt like we had to fight for every kid and every family. It is not easy. It is complicated, sophisticated, hard work. And I'm so excited to be here today and talk a little bit about programs.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. And as many of you know Miriam's been on many of our conferences and webinars and everything. So I love having her on, and I'm so glad she's joining the podcast today. So we're going to really dive in right now to kind of why schools hold on to events, right? So let's talk about, before we dive into the matrix, what's the emotional side of this, right? Why is it so hard for schools to stop doing something even when they know it might not be working anymore? Miriam, do you have insight?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I think if you think about schools, there's such a power in the repetition of the day to day. Like every single day, the kids are showing up, the parents are dropping. Like there's a real power in routine there. And I think that there's this emotional momentum around programs also. I would bet you, Aubrey, I wish I could see our listeners, but if I said to you, how many of you have thought about letting go of your open house, which is the biggest anchor program, more than 50% of the people driving right now listening are saying that's me. You're not alone if you think about that. But I think that there is this emotional umbrella of we've done it for so long. What if that was the thing that would get us the right family? So I think people are afraid to let it go. I think there's an emotional legacy. Sometimes you have also a significant influencer in the school community, like a board member, a donor who, the donor who owns the donut shop and says, we're going to have the donut breakfast. And that was 25 years ago. And people aren't coming anymore and they retire, so it's something that was important once. And we haven't evaluated, should we keep this? And I think that should is very murky and people just don't quite know what to do with it. So I think admission and marketing are always driving towards let's cast as wide a net as possible, but we don't always have the tools to evaluate how can we discern what's effective, not effective.
Absolutely. I think that's so interesting. I mean, I love that the emotions you hit on. I think that fear element is so key because we are afraid of the ramifications of if we take this thing away. What are the
Mhm.
ramifications like internally from stakeholders? Like, what if we take this away? And I'm thinking of auctions. There's this big fear around taking away an auction. What if we don't make
Mm.
up the money elsewhere?
Yep.
There's a lot around that. So there is a lot of emotions surrounding even thinking about like an event and either, figuring out what to do with it or figuring out if it serves your school anymore, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, are there other you work with so many schools all over. Are there specific types of programs? Like the auction is definitely one that's like a bear. Are there other types of programs that come to mind that you feel like, okay, this kind of like some things are trendy, like this kind of program is kind of like out of style and maybe schools can have permission to let go a little.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's different for each school, but I mean, before we hit record, we were talking about like just those things that become like even traditions, right? You were saying like, what was it, coffee with Kara or something like that, like the head of school, right? And like that
Yeah.
was tradition and that kept going. But then like, Kara left and the new head came in. They were like, this isn't working, right? Or if
Yeah.
her parent demographic changes and they're not at school anymore, right? So
Yeah.
like the purpose of the event and what it started out is no longer serving
Mhm.
the school. Auctions certainly. I think community building events, the interesting one I always find is like this hybrid between community building and fundraising. And there's like this
Mhm.
gray area event that is I find, the schools struggle a lot with that one because they're like, are we actually doing this? Like, is this serving? What purpose is it serving? So unclear purpose and fear of taking it away for sure.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. This just jumped to my mind actually and like at the school where I worked at for many years and my kids go to school, for the longest time we didn't have an annual gala. And many schools do. They have an annual dinner or a gala of some sort. And we didn't because the development director at the time said it's not worth the time to invest in like the time, the expense, the headache, the emotional energy to make it happen. And I think those are all costs that go into running events, like for sure time, which is like the most precious commodity, like man woman hours that go into things, asking of teacher, how many times are we going to ask teachers to show up outside of school? What does it look like if we don't have teachers show up outside of school? Like, should they come? Do we comp them a ticket? Like these are all questions that go into things too. And I think if what we're going to show you in a little while is this matrix, but the key is to really think about like, how is this program helping move this school forward? And if you're listening right now and you're thinking about like, how can I turn this into something practical with my team? We're going to drop a few juicy questions in along the way. And this is one of them to just, as you're planning a program, like, how is this helping our mission or how is this helping us move the school forward? The answer may be it's not mission aligned, but there's a reason why we're still going to do it. But it's important to at least come in with a critical eye, and that's okay to ask
Absolutely.
that question.
Yeah, I love that you're kicking us off with some great questions. I have a question for you, Miriam. Like,
Yes.
when I think of our listeners of this podcast, a lot of them are enrollment marketing advancement professionals. And so, I'm curious, we talked about a few things earlier, but how would this like thinking about program evaluation matter to people in those positions and for people telling the school's story? Like, what's the broader
Mm.
implications to not like asking these hard questions, right?
Okay, so it's so interesting, like how programs end up falling into like which departments at schools. And if we think about like advancement, when I think about school advancement, which looks different in every single school, and some schools have a 10-person advancement team that, each person has a small slice of a job, and some schools have a one-person like admission marketing magic wizard professional, and that's it. But the interesting thing about advancement professionals is that we're facing outwards towards the school, like towards the community. And we're showing up and saying, like, hey, come hang out with us. But also, we're trying to reflect what happens inside the four walls of the school building. So, if there's language like our messaging, what's our value proposition? Like, why invest in us? We have to take all of that language that's like happening inside and try to like make it show up on the outside. If I went to an open house, let's say, or to like a fall festival, let's say, of 5 different schools, how would I know the difference between each of the different schools? And I think that like if you're in the marketing department, or development or admission, that's what you want to be able to say. Like you want a parent to be able to walk away and say, this is why I would go to that school. So as you're planning events, think about, where is our value proposition showing up? Is it on the marketing materials? Like, are we brand and mission aligned? Are we, you know, Aubrey, you brought up earlier, like, if we are committed to the outdoors and to nature, what's the carbon footprint of the program that we're running? Are we running a program with 5 bounce houses that feels like electric and like, does that align? Gosh, make sure that the program you're running reflects your school values.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah. And I would add like the plastic water bottles for that curve.
Yes.
I
Oh my
love
God. I got called out on that, by the way. One time I remember we were having a parent ambassador program early in my admission career, and we had Keurig coffee. And a parent came up to me afterwards and said, I don't think this is reflective of our school values. And I was like, gosh, you're so right. Okay, you get to pick up the like big Starbucks jug next time.
Thank you. And help.
Totally. And we laughed about it, but like she was so right. And she was right. And I was right to say, like, this is what's easy for us. Like, how can we make this work?
I love that so much. Yeah. So I think this is why like evaluating the programs is so important. I mean, from a marketing perspective, I'm just thinking about like, if you're putting on a program and it doesn't instill the value proposition and the values of your community, and you're asking these hard questions, right? You can figure out like, is the ROI on this event actually worth it? Right?
Yep.
Are we accomplishing our goals? And I mean, for marketing, it is that messaging that's both internal and external, and it's aligned, similar to how we just discussed with this event. So definitely important. And this is why I'm so glad we're having this conversation today.
Yeah. Can I just offer something? So when Thrive Hive works with schools to help them with their enrollment and marketing, one of the key things that we do is we talk to families and we'll say to them, like, what are 3 words you would use to describe our school? And you can do this. So those of you who are listening, like, choose 5 families over the course of this summer and just ask or send out a survey and just say, like, what are 3 words you would use to describe our school? Hey, use those words in your marketing. So if people say, like, my kid is happy, they're challenged, they're, whatever, use that language when you're talking about your open house or your fall festival or your auction, whatever it is. Just say, come learn about a place where your kid will be happy, they'll be challenged, and like use that language to anchor everything that you're doing with regard to your events. I've worked with so many schools where we do all the work and like we come up with those keywords and then they don't use it on their flyers. I'm like, gosh, stop sounding generic. Like, yes, sound like who you should be.
Oh, absolutely. I think that messaging is really important. I always say you have a built-in audience, especially from your new. So when we work with schools, we're always like that your new families who just went through the process are like a gold mine of data.
Yes.
To collect and to understand the messaging and talk like they talk, like what were the words they were using.
Yeah.
Describe your school and the reasons that they have chosen to come there. So definitely things that you all can think about as you're moving through, putting on this hat to kind of figure out things and have some action items and takeaways here.
Yeah.
Miriam, I'd love to get practical here. So we
Yeah.
talked about a lot here. So let's say you're a school and you're like, okay, what are the signs that is time for my school to reevaluate an event, program, or tradition? Like, are there some key signs that you often see?
100%. So first of all, the most obvious one is like low participation or like a lot of very last minute RSVPs. So we all know, by the way, and if you don't know this, you should know this, that like there is a trend of last minute RSVPs. Like when you put out an event, people are like, no one's coming. Just wait till the week before. But if you feel like in your admission office or your marketing office, you have to like convince people to come, that may be a sign that people are not into it. If you have a lack of parent volunteers around a specific program, like there's just drag around it, that may be a sign. If you run a program for too many years in a row, and sometimes there's an expiration date on programs. I once worked with a company, by the way, this wasn't a school, it was super interesting though. They had a policy when they hired people, there was a 7-year employment limit. They said, after 7 years, you should have a new job. It's not till death do us part. And I thought that was the best idea I've ever heard. You can re-interview for your job. You can find another job in the same school, let's say. But I think that when you set out to add a program in, I think it's really helpful to say, how long do we want to be committed to this? And it's okay to say, we're doing this for now. We're going to run this program for the next 3 years, and we'll see how it goes. How many of your schools have an arts festival or have like that fall festival or something, and it just like it has to be on the calendar, maybe it doesn't have to be. If you've been running it for more than 7 years, I would seriously evaluate, are we sure we want to be doing this? Could we be doing something else? I would say also, obviously, like if it's financially not worth it, like that's worth looking into. Sometimes people find like we used to be able to do this, but the costs have just gone up too much. That's okay. Drop it, find something else. Like that's capitalism. Let your vendors figure out another way to get your money. And again, like, does it reflect our mission? Are we sure that what we're doing is actually showcasing who we are? Those are all signs to say, I don't know, are we sure that we should continue with this program? Or also questions to ask if somebody promotes a program. If you've got that parent ambassador that's like, I just saw that, St. Andrews down the street is running this, their turkey trot, their apple bot, their whatever. Like, you can ask these questions of, okay, what would it take in order for it to be reflective of our values? Like, are we sure that we can do this?
Those are some great questions. Yeah, I mean, I know that working with small schools, a lot of things we see is like also that piece of 2 to 3 people lifting an entire event, right?
Yes.
And what happened, or worse, they're volunteers. And what happens when those volunteers, believe me,
Yes.
hard to replace them. So events do have a cycle in that sense too. I think like the people willing to work on the events, when they cycle out, then you have a void of potential staffing. And
I love that. Actually, that's such a good thing to be aware of, and like something important to remember for like the planners who are listening, to think about like, do we have a staggered age group of who's in charge of a given event or parent association or something? Like, do you have somebody of an older grade and younger grade, so that as that younger grade grows up, you replace it with somebody else, in a younger grade too? Because if you think about it, like I think about all the people who now used to be so invested in like building community in our lower school, and now they're not even lower school parents anymore. So are we sure that those, playground meetups are still happening? You have to make sure that you're like, so that's another thing to be aware of, is like, are our parent volunteers age appropriate for the events that are important to us?
yeah, absolutely. I think that's an amazing thing to think about. And I would also say, the lack of clarity is, I would say, another sign that maybe you need to rethink an event. If you can't actually decipher like is purpose,
Yeah.
and what it's there for, and you can, everyone who's planning it can articulate the goal, then that would be where I would say, maybe time to rethink that event.
Yeah, I have a worksheet actually. We're gonna show you the program evaluation matrix and also a worksheet to attach with that. But I also have a program planning worksheet that helps schools distill like, what is the purpose of this? Is the location reflective of the purpose of this? So also just making sure that like what we're doing is what we should be doing. I'll tell you also, there was one year where we had in my school, we had strategized that we were going to have parlor meetings. Like that was our strategy, like in-home hospitality parlor meetings in 10 different zip codes over the course of the school, in the school community. And I remember like in the summertime, we were like, yeah, it's going to be great. And like, we're planning it out. And then come like November, December, February, like the February funk. And you're like holding these meetings and like 3 people RSVP'd. And I remember saying to my director of enrollment, like, why are we doing this again? And she said to me, because Miriam, we agreed this was our strategy this year and we're trying to see if it's going to work. And it was so powerful because it shut me up. And I was like, you're right. Like, we got to try it and see. We thought it was a good idea. We had data and evidence to try it out. So my like emotional like laziness around it, that's not enough to cancel a program. Like, we had good reason to think it was a good idea. And we went ahead with it. And I don't know, I don't remember if it was successful or not, but I certainly remember that commitment to our strategy.
Yeah. Well, we have to, I always say with marketing, a lot of things are like, it is throwing things against the wall in a strategic manner, but also you have to see what sticks. So I think it's similar to that. And then, reevaluating, and it's okay to say goodbye to things and it's okay to stick with things. So now that brings us to where I'd love to go, which is, let's talk about this evaluation matrix. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure like we've talked about a lot of different things regarding events and programs and stuff. I'd love for you to talk about the evaluation matrix in a way that either gives schools a way to move through feelings and, into an actual criteria of, how to do this. You have this event, you have this program. So can you walk us through the purpose of the matrix?
100%. I want to share also, I learned about this matrix from a CFO of a company. I learned about it. I was attending a conference and he presented this as like, how do we know? And this was like a high stakes corporate environment, but I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I'm going to recreate this for schools because I like the problems are universal. Like, don't you think, IBM also is like, should we continue with the golf outing or not? Like everybody has any program that you're running, somebody's got to run it.
Yeah.
We just have a much smaller budget and like, very holy purpose. So, the questions I think that like one of the challenges with programs also is people have difference of opinion and people feel differently about the program and have a different emotional attachment to it. And one of the elements that I think is really powerful about having a matrix like this is like, it just puts it down in black and white and we can all see and have shared language around like how we think and feel about programs. And it gives boundaries to how we feel about programs. And boundaries are like a hug and make people feel safe, as our middle school principal, Joan Vanderwald, used to say. So can I, Aubrey, should I show it? Should I share
Let's
screen?
do it.
Okay. So here is what it looks like for those of you watching. And for those of you listening, I'm going to describe it to you. So we've got a matrix here with 4 different quadrants. It's like 4 different, corners. And in the top left, we've got a heart. Well, all around, we've got a heart on the top left. We've got a star in the top right. We got a question mark in the bottom left and a tree in the bottom right. So the heart represents high mission, low return. And this is a program that is really reflective of our mission, but doesn't necessarily have a high financial return or enrollment return. This might be, if you are, let's say it's, if you're a faith-based school, it might be like traveling to a country that, if you're Jewish, it might be traveling to Israel, or if you're a Catholic, it might be traveling to Rome and like having a heritage tour. Okay, that's going to be very expensive. It's definitely not going to be a moneymaker for you, but it's incredibly high mission, like you are living the values of the school. And that is something that is important. In the bottom left-hand corner, you've got low mission, low return. So this is a program that we run that is going to be very loosely committed to your mission and is going to be very loosely reflective of like bringing in money, bringing in enrollment. And this is the program that like is easy for us to say, gosh, why are we running this? And that might be the auction. Like, is the auction actually reflective of our school values? Like, do we actually make money from it? Is it actually something people look forward to? Gosh, if the answer to all these questions is no, let's just like recognize that and say, why are we running it? And the other thing is like, you can say, we're not running it for now. Let's give it a rest for 3 years. See how we feel about it. See if we miss it, The top right corner is high mission, high return. Programs that are very mission aligned and very high return. So this might be, by the way, your open house. It might be a tour, a one-on-one tour versus a group tour. Okay. Obviously, very high mission. We're going to show you everything about our school's value proposition. If you're able to track that people who go on a one-to-one tour are more likely to apply and enroll, even though that's super time consuming for you in your admission office, you now have data to tell you we should hold on to that one-to-one tour versus a group tour. Okay. And finally, in the bottom right is low mission, high return. And it's a tree because we call this the money tree. Like, what is a program that you run that's not really connected to your mission, but is actually super helpful in getting kids to enroll or is a big money maker for you? That might be the auction. By the way, there's a school that I worked with one time that there was all this energy around the auction. And I wondered, like, is this really worth it? But they bring in a ton of money. It's a huge community builder, not really reflective of the school's values, but it's a really important, like it's a money tree for them. So they hold on to it. So the way that I would recommend using this matrix is if you're looking now, like the slide up here is blank. And I would just say, put 4 giant, like this is a great thing to do if you've got an offsite, a summer retreat or a fall retreat with your team, or even by yourself, like block off some time, put 4 different pieces on the wall, one with a heart, high mission, low investment, one with a star, high mission, high return, one with a question mark, high investment, low return, or like low mission, low return, basically questioning why are we even doing this? And then the money tree in the bottom right, low investment, low mission, but high return. And then take a bunch of Post-it notes and write down every single event that you run over the course of the year. Okay, from Coffees with Claire, Tea with Timothy, the playground meetups, the open house, your arts festival, your play, whatever it is, your football game, homecoming, whatever it is that you do. Okay. And if you have multiple people on your team, by the way, it's really interesting to do this. Everyone write down all the programs and then stand up and put them up on the wall where you think they go. And if everyone on the team is putting, I don't know, I want to say March Madness pool, but like we're not going to get rid of that, but something, okay? If everyone's putting the winter concert that nobody ever comes to because it's wintertime and people aren't coming to it, okay? If everyone puts that in the question mark category, now it feels like a lot, like we all have permission to just say like, let's not do that next year. Let's just like stay home in our sweats. And maybe what we do instead is send everyone a cozy blanket in January. And we just say, we hope you're having a cozy winter. We can't wait to see you at Spring Festival. Like that probably takes 30 minutes to do instead of a zillion hours to plan the winter concert. No offense to the arts. I love the arts. But just as an example, do you know what I'm saying? Like it gives you the permission to say, wow, turns out we all agree that belongs in question mark category. So this matrix is really helpful. Like I've used it. I've run through this with teams, and it also provides us an opportunity to like wrestle with ideas of like, hey, I don't know, Valentine's Day, like, is it like, where does that actually fit? Should we not? And then we kind of come to a direct answer together. Like we can wrestle with the decision and we come to a decision, and then we can commit to it. And you also, like, if you're a director of management, you can keep this up in your office and keep that, for the year and say, hey, this is what we agreed to. So that's why I really like using this matrix. And I have a worksheet also. I'll share it with you. We'll put it in the show notes, both of my program planning worksheets, to, again, just be able to map it out and have shared language around what we think about programs.
That's so great. I love that.
That's my matrix.
Are there any criteria that you go through when you're looking through this matrix, or do you want to like walk through it as a school, like with a real life school problem?
Sure, absolutely. I think what I would do is just like pulling up the matrix again. I would map out every single event of the year. Hopefully, you guys have a spreadsheet with all of your events where you have everything from like student orientation. I think, some schools have graduation falls under admission and marketing, which is interesting. Not every school does, but that's also like a big question. Like, should you be the one running it, or what events go on around graduation? And I would, like I said, like really just like put it on Post-it notes. Well, first I would make sure that you have a spreadsheet with every single event on it, and then put each one on a Post-it note and just like plot them here. Another piece that you could do, by the way, is if you're doing this, you could also use red, yellow, and green Post-it notes where you write down things that you want to stop on red, things that you want to continue on green, and yellow is like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. And then put them on the wall also, which is really interesting to see, gosh, do we all align on red on certain events? Or if everything comes out as like red and yellow, let's try not doing that for a couple of years. That's also a fun thing to do. And the other question also, like you kind of need a 3D matrix for this, is there's the mission alignment, there's the return on investment, and there's also the investment, like the human and financial investment that you're putting into events. So you can map that out in like a large blob or a small blob that you're putting on the matrix.
I love that so much. That's the one thing I've run into many of these things when working with small schools, is the time investment that doesn't often get calculated into the ROI of an event or program. That time commitment, and like what else if the goals of the school are X, Y, and Z, and we're spending this much time over here, if we took away this time that you're spending over here and put it towards something that was more goal oriented for the school, what would that mean for the school?
I think another thing you can do, by the way, if you feel like you're at capacity, which I bet a lot of people do, is have a policy of one in and one out. Like I know I have that with shoes in my closet for some people in my house, but like it got to the point where it was like, you want to buy new shoes, that's great. One in, one out. So we just can't absorb any more shoes in this house. So, in your, like, could you as a team commit to each other and say, we want to add something new. Okay, but we got to get rid of something. Or like pruning back, for the gardeners out there, like pruning is healthy. It's good to trim. So maybe as a team, you make a commitment and you say, every year, we're going to get rid of a program. We're going to like cut that fresh root, and we're going to say, what else can we do? Let's force ourselves to be creative here. And that's bold, But you certainly can do that, especially if you have people on your team who are incredibly creative and like want to keep watering that creative spirit. That's okay. Like do something new. You don't have to do the same thing year over year over year. I think it's worth asking, and this is something that you could ask families or ask your administration. If there's one program that you knew you would attend or wanted to keep, what would it be? See what the results are and then like respond to your community like that. Keep that and then see what it is that we want to get rid of. But I think the big takeaways here are it's healthy to prune back. It's healthy to have shared language around it so that we know. And it's okay to take a risk and say, like, what's at stake? This is another juicy question I ask all the time. What's at stake if we do? What's at stake if we don't? What's at stake if we hold on to this program and what's at stake if we don't hold on to it?
Amazing.
Try to figure that out, And I think that's helpful to just like build a habit of asking that kind of question too.
Let's say a school made the decision to cut. Like, what are some or significantly change one of their programs or events and stuff? What do you think, is important for the school to keep in mind, perhaps around communication or informing the community? What are your thoughts on that?
I love that question. So one is, from a relational approach, if there's a parent who like holds this program very dear to their heart, I would give them a heads up and just call them and say, hey, I want to let you know our calendar's changed for next year. We're not including our fall festival. And here's why. So being very clear about the reasoning. They don't have to agree with it. They don't have to like it. Let them think what they want to think about it. It's okay. You're never going to please everyone. You know that. But just being kind and being thoughtful about it. Another thing is early communication around what the calendar will hold. So at my school, for example, in November 2026, they're going to share with us the fall 27, 28 calendar. So they're super, super early because people plan. People plan their grandparents' 50th anniversary trip or a bar mitzvah trip or, when is spring break next year? And if your kid is the star of the show, you want to know when is that spring musical going to be. So early communication and sticking to the calendar and not messing with dates unless it's really, really essential, I think is also a very kind way to interact with the parent community and to alert them about things. You may have half the parents who don't care, but for the half who do, it's really important.
Oh, as a fellow planner mom.
Same. When I get that email in November, I'm like, great, like, days off, whatever. I'm planning that.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm like, what conferences can I attend? All these
Yes.
things. And, busy working mom, you got to think about. So, yes, agreed with the calendar. And I would say about messaging, I would say just be mindful of how we're messaging about when something is, if we're reimagining something or taking something away, just the language and how we describe it, it can be done in a positive way. It doesn't need to be in like overly apologetic and very wordy and like defensive. So just really looking at ways that you can acknowledge that this event held value and that it means something to people, and then gently explain and tie it to mission as to, what's happening next. And then also a reminder, like that positive note at the end could also be the other things that are key parts of your school and traditions that you are keeping. I can hope to see you at X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
Or, something along those lines. I think that the communication around events and event changes is also important, as well as making sure they know about them well in advance in that calendar.
Yeah. I think also, right, as you're talking about this, I think an easy, like a gimme line could always be like, as a school, we, school administrators, we're lifelong learners and we're reflecting on our calendar and how our events are reflective of our school experience. And we're excited to share with you our calendar of events for next year.
Yeah.
Just something like that to just like reinforce that we're being thoughtful about it and we're hopeful that these reflect the school mission. I think also something interesting, by the way, especially like for faith-based schools is, well, for all schools, like what events are you not including in the calendar and why? I know. So like my kids go to a Jewish day school and therefore we don't celebrate in school. We don't celebrate Halloween, St. Patrick's Day, St. Valentine's Day. And our head of school always sends out an email the week before, just reminding parents, saying like, as a Jewish school, these holidays we understand are American in nature and many kids may celebrate them, but we don't celebrate them in school. We respect everyone. But like as a reminder, please don't come to school in costume. So like that's also, I think, an opportunity to reinforce this is who we are, this is who we're not, this is what you committed to. And that's, I think, that's also important to remember. That doesn't quite fit. I mean, you could question it on the matrix, like bring it up and say, hey, like I've got this idea. Where does it fit on the matrix?
Yeah, I think that's so key. Well, Miriam, we're at that time of our episode where we transition to our rapid fire questions.
Yes.
So are you ready? Because you did this a long time ago.
I know. Oh my God. There's one question that I think about all the time, by the way. I hope you still ask it. I don't remember if you do, but I'm ready for it.
I hope I do. All right. So here we go. So if you could put one book as mandatory reading in your the high school curriculum, what would it be?
Oh gosh. I would put in Unreasonable Hospitality, which is such a like wonderful and delicious book. And it's just so fun and whimsical and yummy. I highly recommend it. And it's great for teens also.
Yes. It's a good read. It kept me entertained the entire time while also learning and questioning things. So yes. Love it. What is one app you couldn't live without?
Okay, that's the one. Last time I think I remember GPS, like Google Maps, because I get lost all the time. Okay. Now I use Mile IQ, which for me is incredibly helpful. What I love about it is it calculates mileage for me. And like I need to calculate my mileage for reimbursement all the time. But what I love about it mostly is that it solves a problem for me and helps save me time. So I'm a big fan of Mile IQ. If anyone is an entrepreneur listening to this, I encourage you to check out Mile IQ. Actually, the most helpful one for everyone listening actually is called Whisper Flow. I just downloaded this app and it's like a talk to text app. It's incredibly accurate, different languages. It remembers spelling. I really recommend it. Whisper Flow.
Well, we got two for one.
I know. Sorry.
No, I love it. Both of those apps I'll be downloading. So thank you, Miriam. What are you reading right now?
I just started reading the book Glad We Met. I'm always reading books for business. So I just started reading Glad We Met, which is about the art and science of one-to-one meetings. I think it's going to be really good. I just finished reading this book, Beyond High Performance, which is about teams. So I also really encourage you that. And I'm also always reading a fiction book, and I'm rereading Outlander right now because it's just so delicious.
Wait, what were the authors of the two books?
Oh, okay. Glad We Met is Stephen Rogelberg.
Okay.
I'll send you the info on it. For anybody who has a one-to-one, I think that's really important. And then Beyond High Performance is by Jason Jaggard, Jaggard. This is a great book about not just being the best. Like everybody wants to, well, hopefully people like want to be good. But it's like once you're really good at something, then sometimes people say, I've mastered this. I have nothing to learn. I'm not coachable. Like people don't want to be vulnerable. And that's not healthy. So this is beyond high performance. And the question is, what are we capable of? How can we do that? It's really good. This is really good.
And I love, by the way, if you don't follow Miriam on LinkedIn, you're always taking pictures of the books you're reading. Like, how many books does she have on her bedside table?
Well, I do. Here's a tip. What I do is I start every day by reading for 10 minutes or 10 pages.
Yeah, that is great. I do the end of the day. I do the end of the day, 10 minutes. So, but I do not count the pages. So good to know. Okay. Finally, last question. What is one great piece of advice you'd like to leave us with?
A great piece of advice, I think, is stop looking at what other people are doing and just look at what you're doing and just be awesome at it. There are other schools who are going to be competing with you and they're going to do a really great job. Social media is going to make it look shiny, but just like be amazing, connect with your families, focus on what you do have and be really good at that.
I love that so much. And Miriam, I know people are going to want to follow up with you afterwards. Where can people find you and learn more about what you do?
Okay. I love connecting with people. Please, I'm on LinkedIn. Search up Miriam Posner Stein or Miriam Stein. You can find me. We'll put it in the show notes. I'm also on Instagram under the handle Saddle Rock Strategies. So you can find me there, but you can also look up thrivehive.group. You'll find me and Laurie. And honestly, our number one goal is to help school professionals with their enrollment and marketing. We are thrilled when we hear people call us and say, we're at capacity. That's like our dream situation. So please be in touch. I'm so happy to talk to anybody about this stuff all the time. It's what I love to do. I also am at conferences all the time. So if you're ever at a conference and see me, like, please come up and say hello. I'll buy you a cup of coffee.
She's amazing. Yes, I highly recommend doing all those things. Miriam, thank you again for being on the show. We really appreciate it. And audience, I hope you enjoy. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Aubrey.
Thanks for joining us on the Mindful School Marketing Podcast.
We'd love it if you pop into iTunes and leave a review, 5-star preferred. Let us know how you like the show. It helps us improve what we're doing and helps others find us too.